camera?
Slating?
Yep, Mark.
Okay, good.
Haskell Wexler, I'm Gerry Fialka. It's January 6, 2014. It's a real honor and a pleasure. Thank you so much for your time, sir. First question is, what is the best thing for a human being?
The best thing for a human being is that when you get interviewed by a camera crew, to have you respond to all-encompassing questions like that, that you should not be intimidated by the all the modern methods of technology which have consumed us as artists and taken us from how to ask some question that can be easily answered to start a program. The best. So would you please repeat the question?
Well, you answered it well. We can go on, but it's called, what is the best thing for a human being?
Well, each person has to ask that question of themselves. I don't think there is best things of anything. There are better things. There are things more desirable. There are things that need to be investigated. That looking at the world is not to look at winning and losing. I mean, part of inherent in that question is this whole team idea of the idea is to have something specific as an object and do it, and then you win, and then you go on, and that's best. And then to try to evaluate amongst those things is an abstraction that if it would lead somewhere to make you a better person, take it. But in general, to put that as a question in your head of what's the best thing for a human being is open.
Well put. It evoked Bucky Fuller saying, there's no passengers, we're all crew. But my question second for you is, what's the favorite form you get information? What's your favorite form of information?
My favorite form of information, I can't say I have a favorite form of information. Certainly I listen more carefully to people whom I know, whom I love, and information is, usually we speak of information as factual things to know.
Yeah.
And information per se has to be perceptive, subjective, humanized, fed into your ideology, and it can, and sometimes it's spoken of as knowledge. You go to college, and then you answer the questions correctly, and then you have gathered the information and satisfied the authorities, so that the search for information is just, it can be the part of the search for what's truth and what a human and which what can make you feel better and make the world better. But that the ideas of information as we identify the meaning of that word is just the methods that we have designed to gather the accumulation of, now they even call it data.
Yeah. Do you think this need or want to search for information is hardwired? Is it in us innately, or did we learn it as human beings?
Children are often called curious. Curiosity is a motive for gathering what you call information. I would like to call it knowledge rather than information. Information has in it a specificity which it can be quantified, and once it's quantified, it can fit into cultural patterns, which may not be helpful. But curiosity means you want to know, and not just know what's in this part of your brain, but know what feels good, what responds good, what you might call sensual. And of course, we're born with that to a certain extent, and that's why I speak of children having curiosity. And one of the things that culturally we have to do is to cultivate that and rejoice with that. And of course, in doing that, to give young people some of the tools so they can pursue that.
Can you conjure up your earliest memory ever, or one of your earliest memories?
I can't distinguish between what was one of my earliest memories from what certain things I heard about myself.
Right.
For example, I had a difficult circumcision. It seems like a simple operation, but apparently it was painful, and it went awry somehow. Now, I don't know that I learned that fact, because at that part, as smart as a person I am now, at the age less than 1, I was lacking some things. But that kind of memory, I believe, has some effect on, and the fact that my mother told me about it is, besides being the difficult breech birth I was from a very young mother. My mother was, I think, 18 or 19 years old when I was born. So that I could say, because I'm being interviewed, that when Haskell Wexler was asked what of his earliest memories was, he remembered when some rabbi took a knife to his dick.
I like. Do you think memory is more a curse or more a blessing?
Again, being a good interviewer you're looking for extremes. And I can't say memory is either a more curse or a blessing. I think recognizing memories and how you have responded to them and how they linger as memories is an important way of self-analysis.
Well put, Haskell, thank you. Could you tell me on a role model or someone you admired within your immediate family and then outside your immediate family, and briefly, what specifically did you get from them?
I think the strongest influence to me was my mother. Although in the family my father was a very strong, good, attentive father, I think perhaps because I was the firstborn and born so young and with that my mother, I remember early on things like when we had food, my mom said, eat everything on the plate. You got to remember the starving Armenians. I know that when I did nice things, or what she thought, or what this is before school and so forth, she would compliment me, and when she would say not good things, it was very important for me, and she might even put a star on the refrigerator, or stick a thing, I think. So my mother engendered certain general feelings about who I am in the world and who I want to please, I guess.
Very good. Outside your immediate family, any major influence or role model early on?
Depended on early. My 8th grade teacher, Sarah Greenebaum, Studs Terkel when I was a teenager. A lot of people that I couldn't remember by name.
Well, that's good.
Interested.
You covered some good folks there. Very good. Haskell, do you think evil people exist, or does evil use people as a vehicle?
I don't use the word evil. I think the word evil is evil word. I think the word evil usually comes out of biblical things. And evil in relation to human beings is a non-existent human characteristic, both medically and psychologically.
Very good. How would you advise someone to deal with an enemy? And before you say, I'm going to read a few modern thinkers' thoughts. The first one is Alan Watts. He says, if you acknowledge your enemy, you empower them. Coppola stole from the mob and the samurais. Keep your friends close and your enemies closer. JFK said, forgive your enemy, but don't forget their name. And Fellini says, I need an enemy. And Chinese proverb goes, he who cannot agree with his enemy will be controlled by them. So the basic question is, how do you advise someone to deal with an enemy? But first, how would you specifically react to Alan Watts, the first one? If you acknowledge your enemy, you empower them.
I think it's true. I think that if you acknowledge your enemy, you empower them, because by acknowledging them, you're and it's difficult for me to understand the word enemy. You see, I think this whole cultural my team, your team, my government, my flag, my race, my way of looking at things are qualifying as enemy, being certainly if one is physically assaulted, it's safe to say that that person that action is that action is unfriendly act. But if, say, your father, if your father took a strap to you and beat you on the butt, which was common when I was growing up. In fact, my mother would say, if you're bad, my father is going to give the strap to you. And there were times where my father would actually put his hand on his belt. Now, that is a hostile, violent, physical act to me. But I would not say my father is my enemy. Now, if you want to go on definition of what is or is not an enemy, certainly what Alan Watts is saying, I believe, is you have to know who your enemy, who you think your enemy is, or why he thinks your enemy is, and that in doing that, you can empower yourself, and perhaps you can empower him so that he won't be your enemy.
Well put. American Indians say your enemy is your best teacher. But one of my favorites is Ram Dass. He says, I'm having a real hard time loving George Bush.
Yes, when propagandists want us to go along with inhuman, hostile, often cruel actions, they tell us that the leader, who happens to be black, loves his wife.
Yeah.
They have in Nazi Germany tell us about Hitler and Eva Braun and the affection that they have, and what a good painter he was, and also the Sopranos, the head of the mafia. He ordered people killed. He did all those things, but also he was a human being. He had family. He had sense of fairness. An enemy is too extreme a word.
Well put. James Joyce was the first projectionist in Dublin about 100 years ago. He basically checked out. He says, this is stupid. Why should I go inside a building and see a movie of a tree when I can go outside and see a real tree? Years later, Faulkner said, sometimes the best fiction is more true than journalism. Why do we as humans have to recreate things in order to get them? In other words, why do we have to go to a theatrical play of people acting out life? Why don't we just live life?
Just dealing with the question about sensing nature first on, or sensing actually almost anything immediately faced on three-dimensionally with smell, color, air. This camera is recording through a mechanical device what I'm saying, and supposedly the truth, as much as we can, and it will be shown to other people. But the quality and true meaning of it, or full meaning of it, would not be as complete as perhaps you have. I excuse me for making a compliment, but okay. I'm thinking of when Ruby shot Oswald. I was looking at TV at that moment, live. I knew it was live. And I was shocked. I was profoundly shocked. And then afterwards, when they played that, my feelings were quite different. And it was not just because I had seen it before, but because I was control of the image. I could have switched channels. I could have done all kinds of things. And that has to do with what you were talking about, is is about out into the real world per se. Because I have a whole concept of contemporary culture being life the movie. And that relates to what you might call fiction, or what we used to call reality.
Is perception reality?
For the person, yes.
Yeah. Lewis Hines published photographs of child labor in printed matter, and cultural historians said that was the tipping point to change laws. Same thing Upton Sinclair with The Jungle. Books were tipping points to change laws. The question's a little complex in that, can you tell me any music, theater, art, or film that was actually the tipping point to change laws? We know they have big impact, but we know that printed matter, they've said that was the tipping point to change laws. Now, we both know that it was a zeitgeist. There was much more that changed the laws. But in general, how would you respond to that question?
There, on child labor, for example, there was a British quatrain saying, the children work. The children work every mill. The children work in every mill, and every day they get to look at the men and women, at the men playing golf. They were able to look out the window and see the men playing golf. I've got the exact words of it. So that it was an example of artists calling attention to child labor. I once knew the quatrain. Yes, the golf links lie so near the mill that almost every day the laboring children can look out and see the men at play. Now, that's a little poem that was in Britain when child labor was big. I don't know how well read it was. I don't know whether it was the tipping point, but tipping points are written by people who write history. Changes are made through social action. Changes don't happen like that, but Life the movie happens like that. Life the movie, the light bulb goes on. This is what changed it. Some good guy decides this is the thing that has to be done, and now the slaves are free. Okay?
Yeah.
And that idea of things has a control over how we look at the future, of how we look at the past. We recently had biography. We have all the stuff about Mandela. Mandela was a revolutionary. Mandela was, if he was what might be called a communist. He knew that the economic system was an integral part about apartheid, and he was a danger to society. Okay, he was not just the individual, but the whole movement. I was in South Africa as a part. I was sunk in the ocean, in the Indian Ocean, and landed a lifeboat in South Africa. Lived with the Pondos for a while, and later into Durban. At the time, and that was in November 1942. I was shipmates with a guy named Milt McCord. Okay, we we became active with some white people, mostly Jews, who were ostracized completely from society and not generally known, sort of underground, who were working against the apartheid system. But also we worked in conjunction with sailors from all over the world, where the South African government was going to take sailors, say from Greece, and have them repatriated to Greece when Greece was still in control of the fascists. Because even during World War II, the Allied powers were afraid that the anti-fascist powers, certainly in the Middle East, where I was later, would go too far. And that's why Petain, when I was in Oran, North Africa, the French, the acceptable French to the Americans were there to make sure that the Spanish Republicans, who I was working with, trying to get into Franco Spain, were isolated. So, so the overall question about what the hell was the question?
Well, you covered it well. It was basically that books were known as being tipping points to change laws. Can film, theater, and art and music do that? But
books.
You covered it well, but go ahead.
Books, history books, are written by those in power.
Oh yeah.
The monks sat down and said, "This is what was happening." There were 6 million poor fucking peasants in the street, starving.
Yeah.
Okay, but they wrote down what happened.
Yeah.
Some of it was true, some of it wasn't, but it becomes true.
Yeah.
Jerry?
Let's grab a new slate real quick.
Second slate here.
Oh, sorry.
Rowan.
You don't really
Right.
need a slate.
Second
We'll
slate.
do it anyhow.
Okay, Mark.
You want another one? Second
No.
slate?
Okay.
Now,
Has-
look
oh,
at
go
I
ahead.
can see you're asking me big philosophic questions, so I have to give longer questions.
Oh, you're doing fine.
Yeah.
A screenwriting teacher told me a great film or great art is when you can clearly see the intention of the maker. Kubrick said the opposite. He said a great film or great art is when you can clearly not see the intention of the maker. What role does intention play in your creative process?
I think in the creative process, you want involvement. And to get involvement, of course you want to tell what you think is the truth. But also, you want to be able to go at subjective things which are out culturally. And so that's called entertainment. And entertainment means you don't know exactly what the facts or the words are, but that makes you feel good, or that makes you have feelings.
Yeah.
And that's about it.
No, that's good. Do you think humans are more feeling or more head? Are we more head or more heart? Just in general.
Since presenting fiction to people requires the apparatus of culture, you're going to need, and you are spending money, we'll say, if you wanted to have this interview and this discussion seen, requires certain abiding by certain rules of society, you know, of what ABC might buy, or what aspects of the conversation will be acceptable from people who accept things to be able to send on to other people. On a simple business level, you see when they come out of film how much money and how much advertising they do to get people to want to go see films. So that, ask me the question again.
Well, I have to do it this way. Do thoughts create emotions? Basically, the question, do you think people in general, humans, are more head or more heart? Are we more thinking beings or are we more feeling beings? Just in general.
I think contemporary society feeds on people going to shortcuts, going to a couple of words, and then you know it's good or bad.
Yeah.
And I think this is a serious danger. It's very good for advertising. Advertising tries to do that. I heard some advertising, and I made a lot of commercials, so I can go a lot of length on that. But an advertising guy was saying, well, we need something like the Nike swoosh. So when you see this simple little sign, people know that it's something good. And if they know it's something good, then they'll buy it. And you need, when the other guys at the agency say, yeah, what about this? What about the cross? You know, that's worked pretty good for Christianity, you know. So that it's good for advertising people, it's good for governments. All you have to do is say the word 9/11. All you have to do is say it's in our security. All you have to do is say when a company is robbing people, just as much as if someone goes into a 7-Eleven and clears the place out, robs them of millions, they speak of them as a troubled corporation. And this media and transmission excuse because they can't say, well, we can't give all the goddamn reasons, you know, this is it. And when you accept their language, then you're in their control. Then you're in their control. When they accept that Castro is our enemy, okay? Then you don't have to say, well, why or to what end or how is he an enemy, you know? Yeah. You don't have to say that, or even this Al-Qaeda, you know? Like, now, who is this Al-Qaeda? And if he is my enemy, you know, what is this Arab guy running around with a sheet around him and an AK in his hand? What is this threat to our security? Well, so take the words. Threat? What kind of threat? Our security in what way? And who are we talking about? Our security? I mean, me or you or British Petroleum or what? So once you accept their language and so forth, and this I'm getting to the answer to your question. Once you easily accept these quick labels, and the quick labels are given to us by those who are in a facility to give us the labels, that is those in power as far as transmitting information, then you are in their control.
Well put, thank you. What first attracted you, Haskell, to actually saying, I want to be a filmmaker? Were you going to movies growing up in Chicago and you said, hey, I can do that? What point did you say, I want to do that?
When I was very young, we traveled the world a lot. And Chicago is the home of the Bell and Howell camera, 16 millimeter. Very few people had those cameras, and when they did, they were for going on vacation films. And so I took it upon myself, in the 10, 11 years old, 12 years old. For example, I was in Mussolini's Italy, and I would shoot things that were interesting to me, and of course I would shoot the family, do the family movie, and I had a good feeling about when I looked through the frame and so forth that I was. I don't know exactly what the good feeling was. I mean, psychiatrists could say that it separated me from the family per se, or I don't know, they think of all this shit, but it was a very subjective thing.
Yeah. Did you grow up going to see photo exhibits or art museums, looking through books of paintings? How did you form your framing aesthetic? How would you say? Did it come naturally, or did you have some sort of sense of framing?
I never did very consciously. I do remember when Picasso's Guernica, I was the early supporter to the Spanish Republican cause. In fact, I tried to join the Abraham Lincoln Brigade, and my Freedom of Information Act will show that his yellow Oldsmobile was in the parking lot of a meeting of the Friends of the Abraham Lincoln Brigade. I forgot the question.
Oh, it was about how did you form your framing aesthetic? And you were bringing up like Picasso, so you saw a painting.
Well, I saw this painting, and because the painting was a huge mural, and was showed in the museum of the Chicago, the Art Institute, Chicago. It was the first time that the civilians were bombed intentionally, and it was by Mussolini and Hitler's Air Force, and the anguish on the faces looking up at the bombs and so forth. When I knew that was going on in the world, and that information, what was going on in the world, was not in the regular American press, because the American press was still friendly with Mussolini's Italy and Hitler's Germany, because they were the anti-Comintern alliance, and the big enemy was communism and Soviets.
There's a great Guernica story, really briefly. A German political official is touring the painter studios in France, and Picasso's just finishing Guernica. And the German walks up to Picasso and looks at the painting and goes, "Did you do that?" And Picasso goes, "No, you did."
That's right, I didn't hear that.
So Jean-Luc Godard told Michael Moore at the Cannes Film Festival when Fahrenheit 9/11 premiered, "This film's going to help Bush get elected." Now, it not necessarily helped Bush get elected, but it did galvanize pro-Bushers. We've had a slew of important political docs over the last decades, and it's really healthy. But the bottom line question is, do you think they more pacify or more activate people?
The bottom line is I don't know. I don't know. It's just the really bottom line is we've got to keep doing it.
Beautiful.
See?
That's what Sidney Lumet said. "I've made political, socially conscious films my whole life, but that doesn't do shit. But it ain't going to keep me from trying."
No.
So talk about Duchamp said, there's no art without an audience. What role does the audience play when you're making your film? Are you thinking of them?
Yes, I'm thinking of an audience. I'm thinking about being a good communicator and thinking how to get through this myriad system of to get it out to people.
Yeah.
But again, there's just no easy way. I think it helps for people to know that the conventional ways we get our information is cooked. It is cooked not in favor of life and human beings, but in cooked in favor of death and power and greed and control. And of course, within that are vicissitudes or our ups and downs of humanity, of very rich people doing what they can to do nice things for all the poverty and all the lack of health care and lack of education that's out there. All those things should be social, our problem. That's what government was supposed to be for. That's why we pay taxes. That's why we pay for organizations like OSHA, like SEC, like the Food and Drug Administration, to protect us from the natural avarice of a system that puts profit ahead of people.
Haskell, what does courage mean now?
Courage is sort of an individual word. Courage, I guess, means is being engaged and not being browbeaten into inaction. Courage, all I can say, the opposite of courage is hanging up your jockstrap of life. You know, that's what I mean.
Beautiful. What's more important, conviction or compromise?
Well, conviction or compromise, it just would depend. Certainly, going immediately to, with conviction, to destroy and annihilate is not a victory. To compromise on fundamental things is reprehensible and not desirable. But to function in the world, compromise is essential. And compromise includes listening to people who don't agree with you, listen carefully and be able to engage in discussion. And as I said before, to engage in such a discussion, you have to know what you're talking about. When they do family counseling between husband and wife, the man will say something, and then the therapist asks the wife, "What did you hear? What did he say?" So that you have to know about the words and the ideas that are being communicated before you automatically take that kind of position. You see, and that's what we have to. That's what we have to do when somebody is a Tea Party person, or we label. Okay, well, I don't listen to those fuckers. I don't look at Fox News. I look at Fox News. I want to hear what they're saying. I want to know why what they're saying, and what I would like to say is I would like to be able to talk to you, Mister who's reading off the teleprompter, and say, what does that word terrorist mean? What I just saw a shot of a guy sitting in Las Vegas on a really nice chair in front of a monitor with a joystick with a drone. They hit a wedding in Pakistan, okay? And he went home, and he was a good father. He was able to go back early enough to pick up his kid at school, and his wife had a good dinner for him, okay? And then there's a guy, maybe a woman, pissed off at some Americans who've been dropping bombs on them, and they take some gasoline and some other stuff, and they drive up in front of the embassy and kill themselves. Who's the terrorist?
Yeah.
Who's the terrorist?
Yeah.
So just say, yeah, Mr. Tea Party guy, or, you know, what are we talking about?
Yeah.
If you don't know what you're talking about, you can't get anywhere.
Yeah. Well put. Haskell, what event or person politicized you? It's been made clear that your mother really installed in you this concern for other human beings. But was there one event or some, an early event or person that really said, I want to be politically active?
I don't know specifically. I do know Friday the 13th, 1942, when a German torpedo hit between 4 and 5 hatch on my freighter, and seas were coming in on me, and I helped a Greek shipmate get out of his cabin because the door jammed because of the explosion. I do know that the time that existed between when I finally left the ship, which I was the last one to leave the ship on a 20-millimeter cannon that kept the submerged until some of the guys got in the lifeboat. Those hours of whether I was going to be dead or alive, or maybe even the minute when the guys pulled me into the lifeboat and I felt my cock, and I thought about life and death. And I think that probably at that point, I just felt about life, and what I wanted to be in life, It certainly wasn't that I wanted to kill the Germans who surfaced and actually took films with an Aeroflex camera, which was my first movie camera that my friend Victor Solo got off a dead German, and I was coming back from Europe on a ship with troops, that I bought this advanced military camera from Germany because it was the first. Our cameras were not reflex. We never looked through the lens the way we do now. I guess one other time when I was credited with killing a guy on the Scheldt estuary, and I didn't see him, but I had we had to go ashore and I had a weapon that I got from a Russian lieutenant in Murmansk. And I shot into a window area where the fire was where we were being fired on, and the Canadian guys came up to me afterwards, and they said, "You got that sniper up there." I had no idea that I had, and they gave me his identification. It was sort of like a driver's license, and he was born the same year I was born, 1922. But all that stuff is afterwards. You know, I'm talking to you. At the time was it's just
Right.
shit, you know. But all that can be bullshit.
Yeah.
See, I'm just bullshit to tell you. So I don't know, but this is what I think.
No, you flushed it
Yeah.
out well.
Jerry,
Yeah.
I've got to leave,
Yeah.
unfortunately, because I'm right in the middle of
Okay.
a job. So,
Go. That's all right.
but Haskell, that was so far, it's a fantastic interview. I'm a great fan of yours, and what you're saying is just awesome.
More lifestyle choice or genetics?
Don't let Monty off there.
Well, I'm not the best one. I'm about to be 92 years old, February 6th. Okay.
Yeah.
And I'm old, and my mother got to be pretty old. I've had all kinds of things. I've had 3 different cancers, and on the basis of the books, I don't have them anymore, and I do the normal things to keep in shape. I used to run 6 miles every day, and I go to the gym every day. Also I'm pissed a lot. And
Well, I've heard if you complain and you gossip, you live longer.
yeah,
Well, that's a good thing.
Thank you,
yeah.
sir.
You think you got that from the way your parents raised you, or you got that on your own?
Well, I don't know. I mean, actually, I think that I'm the last person to really know what the hell makes me tick, and I sort of don't want to know because, I don't know. It's just personal,
Yeah. Is ambition based more on fear or more on joy?
I think with me, it's a lot on fear. I mean, I know that you're supposed to feel the joy and so forth, and somehow I know I'd like to do that, and I think what I'd like to have is those close to me say, "Geez, Haskell, that was terrific what you did," And then I sort of like that, But just for myself,
Yeah. Is loyalty based on reason?
loyalty based on what?
Reason.
Oh, I like to think loyalty is based on reason, and I'm sure it is. But also, I'm sure that there are all kinds of other subjective things that I don't know what they would be.
Yeah. Moshe Feldenkrais works with healing and movement. He says it's literally possible to identify a weakness and incorporate it to become a strength, rather than we're normally taught to overcome a weakness. Can you tell me a weakness that you've actually incorporated to become a strength?
I can't think of any weakness I've ever overcome at all. I think I have weaknesses that I've ignored, but any fundamental things about weakness, I don't know. I do think, I do believe in the abstract concept you said, that those things which are normally considered weaknesses can be understood and used and turned around to be the opposite of a weakness. I agree with that theoretically, but how that can function in the real world, I'm not able to say.
Yeah. You know, Marshall McLuhan said it in these terms. He says you can literally take a breakdown and it can become a breakthrough. I heard you mention his name in the documentary on Medium Cool, that you used the title because McLuhan was in the air, but you tried to read him and you didn't understand him. That's fine. I've studied McLuhan deeply, and there was one thing I wanted to ask you about. He says, in contrast to Marx, and this is simplifying it, but just for general conversation, McLuhan says, or Marx says, the point of the world, and the occupiers use this as a sign, the point of the world is not to interpret it, it's to change it. And McLuhan would say, good luck, you can't change much because your inventions change you. Which one, how would you discuss that? Do you think the fact that humans invented spoken word, printed word, cell phones, changes more than the content itself?
If you want to make change, you have to know from what to what. We had a sort of an overt classic example of the election. People knew Bush, we wanted change. And there were all kinds of things, a lot of them subjective. We wanted change. Not 100%, okay. Obama came in to represent that change. He never identified change from what. By never identifying change from what, we are robbed of the history that we need to know what we have to do to change.
Yeah.
You know? I mean, after all, lying to the American people, overtly lying to the American people about going to war, killing people halfway around the world, killing Americans who were thought to being defending America, and then going out of office and being on TV shows where you talk about the great attention you had to from your doctor for your heart attack, riding in Air Force One with Obama to Mandela, and to be considered honored as being not the criminal that Rumsfeld and Bush and the whole apparatus are on any level, legal level, moral level, any level, and to have them ignored is to not be able to make this country a better country.
Yeah. Haskell, how do we stop our governments from going to war?
Well, I've been working with soldiers. One way is those who go to war or have been in war, realize it's not good, it's bad, and the government knows this very well. The going to remote war. There's a group now of snipers snipers are trained assassins, and they have incredible training. They're able to, kill a person half a mile away. They're able to do all kinds of personal killing, which of course the government tries to insulate our troops from. And now many of them are back now after going through the training, and it is murder training to murder, and doing it. They are upset. They are heavy-duty PSTDs, post-traumatic thing. And they're also endangering their family. They recognize all this. But and the only place that they feel that they can go are amongst themselves. And so there are groups now, a lot of them form motorcycle groups, and they try to get out of this thing that the military tries to do. They try to erase the idea that it's okay to kill.
Yeah.
But what they do build on is comradeship, all the good things that we have in them. The sergeant of my nephew who went in, he told him right on, who's in, look, forget all this patriotic stuff, forget all this, you're here for your buddy. That feeling of your buddy did not leave these snipers. They feel that that's the only home they have to keep them sane. That's the only thing that gives them comfort, Now, knowing all this stuff, a civilized society should deal with these poor guys, and there are more and more of them. Of course, we hear about the suicide rates and so forth. Civilized societies have to deal with it in civilized ways. So there won't be any change, getting to your point about change.
Can anger be a productive emotion?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Haskell, how do you find peace of mind?
I haven't been able to. I feel comfort being able to talk to you, talk to other people, and to always be assured that I'm not some crazy commie who is egomaniac,
Yeah. Beautiful. If you were walking down the street today and you met yourself as a 12-year-old, what would you say to your 12-year-old self?
I was a sailor for 5 years. The sailors has an expression, fuck them all but 6 and save them for pallbearers. I mean, you said 13-year-old.
Yeah. That's good. Now, Haskell, you've been really generous with your time. I don't know if you want to keep going, because I could ask you more, but if Mark or Gallo have one, but...
I wanted to say something about Mark.
Please.
Because Mark, my association with him is within the union. And Mark is one of those guys where he is, at least my view, is he is very methodical, orderly. I mean, man. And within that, he's able to give me insights to the bigger things that are in our union, by seeing seeing all these other factual things, it's given me material to fuel my mind, and so I appreciate that very much, Mark.
That's
I
good.
value our friendship very much, Haskell. Thank you.
That's good, Mark. That's very good. And maybe we could just,
I'd
Gallo.
like to ask
Yeah,
Haskell
go
a
ahead,
couple of
Gallo.
things. Haskell, can you, and of course respond to Jerry's, do you have one, out of all the features that you've done, is there one that stands out to you, and why? Is there the most memorable one, and why so?
Well, of course, on the feature, the one that I wrote and directed and shot, Medium Cool, I think just by happenstance hits on a lot of things which are contemporary messages, and I'm really glad Criterion has got that whole package out, and I think the package is a good contemporary package.
They flushed it out well. You know, we met on the streets of Santa Monica once because you had just shown a short at the New Art about, I don't know the title of it, but it's where you tie animals down and they do a nuclear blast. And it's a setup. And so you're walking out of the theater and I come up to you and I goes, Haskell, could I ask you a question? And you went, yeah, I didn't hurt any animals.
No, strangely enough, see, that's a good example of communication.
Right.
It's called enhanced radiation.
Right. That's the title of the short?
That's right.
Yeah.
And the government has a nuclear type weapon where it doesn't kill people. It just
Neutron bomb?
it just pardon?
Neutron bomb?
Yeah,
The neutron
it's
bomb.
the neutron. Yeah, it had the neutron bomb. Yeah, thanks. And of course, they did tests on it. And they said it works. And so I said, "Gee whiz!" They did tests on a neutron bomb. And I didn't know they didn't test it on people. They must have tested it on animals. So I said, "Well, I'll just recreate that." So we went out and I had some USC students, and in the afternoon we were in a quarry here, and we got some animals,
Right.
and we, of course we put blood on a chicken, and the big thing was a horse stumbled and fell, and I was in a church. That was the first time it was shown, and at the end it said, I said the government did tests on the neutron bomb, but those tests are not available to us. What you see is a simulation. And then I go on, and then I had the same thing in Russian and written in different languages at the end with, I think I used John Lennon's song Imagine at the end. Yeah. Well, when the end of it and the Q&A came, the first thing was, what did you do to those animals? You know? And so I had to explain that I had a veterinarian there, and he tranquilized the horse the way they do when they treat the horse, you know, and it was fake blood on this and the little dog. So
it's a powerful short, but here's the point. I walked up to you, not going to mention anything about the movie. I actually helped program the program, and I just caught you afterwards for a second. I says, could I ask you a question? He goes, no, I didn't hear any animals. I says, do you recall any details when you shot Uncle Meat with Frank Zappa? And you went, what? Because it was such a disconnect. Yeah. So there's a couple filmmakers, maybe you could just say an anecdote about them, or if you can recall anything about, because they just showed Uncle Meat at USC a couple weeks ago.
Oh, no kidding.
And on the big screen. And you know, Frank took 20 years editing it. and you're in it.
Yeah.
Is there anything about Frank Zappa in particular that you could mention with your experience making that film Uncle Me?
I liked Frank because he was not identifiable. He was sort of like an iconoclast. He was he knew through humor and so forth that he could get ideas across. And actually, I did some shooting for Frank because Frank did music for Medium Cool.
That was my question. I said,
Yeah.
did you trade your cinematography for
Yeah.
his use of those songs? Because you did another one of my faves is Wild Man Fisher, which Frank produced, is in Medium Cool.
And Paramount had trouble with Wild Man Fisher. I had to take him off, his song off the roller derby thing, and then I put it back on.
Good. Yeah. A couple other filmmakers, just briefly, if you want to mention any anecdotes. Hal Ashby.
Well, Hal Ashby was a big influence on me. Hal was, I mean, Norman Jewison and Hal Ashby, all of us were heavily involved in the anti-war movement and in the civil rights movement. When we were doing In the Heat of the Night, for example, all of us were active in the civil rights movement. So that I did a film called The Best Man. I shot it. Gore Vidal wrote the script, and Hal Ashby was assistant editor on that. So I'd worked with Hal on many films.
In The Loved One, you get credited as a producer as well.
Yes,
That's,
because I bought through Filmways. I bought from Louis Malle the Evelyn Waugh novel. From Louis Buñuel. Did I say Louis Malle?
oh, Louis Buñuel, really?
Yeah, Louis Buñuel owned the rights to The Loved One.
Oh, did he really? And didn't Terry Southern write the screenplay?
Terry Southern was one. Christopher Isherwood was called in, and then Elaine May and I were the unnamed writers as well. I was co-producer because I owned the rights to the novel.
Yeah. You know, I'm glad you brought up Louis Buñuel because I've been dying to get your reaction to his quote. I'm for anyone, this is Louis Buñuel said, I'm for anyone who seeks the truth, but I part ways when they claim they found it. Any comment?
No, it's pretty good.
Because, I mean, a lot of your filmmaking is directed about capturing the truth. But you will admit that you can't capture the truth.
It should be seeking the truth. I mean, the Orwell quote of, in a time of deceit, telling the truth can become a revolutionary act. I think that we try to tell the truth, and we have to, part of the truth is we live in an era of deceit.
Yeah. Do you think punishment works? You know, Gregory Bateson said punishment doesn't really work. So my thing is I have difficulty with like Errol Morris's Fog of War, and have you seen his Rumsfeld film? Because it basically you probably saw Fog of War. Did you see Fog of War, the McNamara?
Yeah, I did.
Yeah, he admits he's a war criminal, and I feel that he's humanizing a war criminal. But indeed, he's educating people. But my wife's dad said, well, humanizing anyone is a good thing.
That's true.
Yeah.
But in the course of humanizing them, to deny that they do anti-human things,
Yeah.
to deny that and put it in proportion is wrong, and that's the danger we have of of what we call celebrityhood or personality thing, you know. I mean, certainly, I believe that Obama is smart enough to know even more than I know about what a better world would be.
Yeah.
Okay, but he doesn't do it.
Yeah.
He does the contrary wise. Now, does that make him a bad person? That kind of question is for a psychiatrist. It's not for evaluation of the President of the United States.
Yeah. But again, do you think punishment works? Because in the long run, if we throw Kissinger in jail for being a war criminal, does that do anything?
No, I think what we call accountability. Accountability works.
Yeah.
Accountability works. I mean, the same way we're not having capital punishment now, you know?
Yeah.
Capital punishment does not work.
Yeah.
The idea that capital punishment keeps people from committing crimes is false.
Yeah. Haskell, why are most artists liberal?
Well, again, I'm going with definitions. I mean, it depends on, I'm first on the word artist
Yeah.
and the word liberal. When I was in North Africa, and they had a GI whorehouse, and but I didn't know. I was in line. I thought it was for the they had a little theater set up for the Salvation Army guys to go to the theater. But turned out I was in the line for the GI whorehouse. So when I was, there were about 500 guys behind me till I found out what was playing was not what I thought what was playing. And so I went in there, and the whore was French, you know, and so being Haskell, I was talking to her, and I said, "Look at you were here just 2 weeks ago, fucking with the Nazis. You know, what is this shit?" And she says, "I don't know." He says, "In France, I was the grand artiste. But to these Americans, I'm the cocksucker." So when we talk about artistes, I'm looking at definition of artists.
Yeah.
Okay. Then about the artists, and what was the second part? Communicators. Anyway, I think that artists, you know, I mean, there should be a definition of the word artist, but I don't know what it is.
You know, Auden, the poet, has a great line. He says, well, he basically wrote about this, that the mystery of art is that we really don't know if it activates or pacifies us.
Yeah. That's true.
Yeah. Just
Can I ask you-
yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, Haskell, could you talk about growing up, meeting Studs Terkel, how you met each other, and how you influenced each other as you were growing up?
Yeah. When when I was in high school, I went to Progressive High School in Chicago. We put on plays, some classical, some not, and we put also anti-war plays. The film called Bury the Dead, and there was a group called the Chicago Repertory Group, and Studs Terkel was part of that. And they had actors, and they put on plays, and so they had a play, a Living City thing, and I guess they wanted an actor to play Lindbergh, and I was like 6'1.5", which I think I'm 6'1.25" now. And so I played Lindbergh, and also they played Waiting for Lefty, and they played the leftist plays at that time, and so that was that atmosphere of those artists who were, and it was part of Roosevelt's Federal Arts Project, so that many of the people we met were artists who were getting money to do murals in post offices. Julio de Diego, a artist I met in high school.
So Studs was part of the theater group?
Yeah. I do remember one time the theater group was on 7th Street, and one time when I was still in high school, amphibious planes came from Mussolini's Italy and landed on Lake Michigan. And it was a big thing. The city of Chicago greeted them and were all excited. As I was excited, I thought, just this goddamn planes flying this and landing there. And so I was telling, and then they decided that in honor of Bilbao, his name was, the officer, that they were going to change the name of 7th Street, that the Chicago Repertory Group, to Bilbao. And so, and I was talking to Studs about these planes, and Studs says, look at it, he says, God damn it, these guys are fascists. So I said, well, what are you talking about? You know, he says, look at. I said, what is a fascist? Well, first he said they're changing the name of our street, you know, and the other thing is that fascists is when the government and the military and when big business, the military you join up together, and the government gets some joker like Mussolini to fill the people full of bullshit, and that's what fascism is. So, I didn't really change immediately, but I thought about that because I had been in Italy, and I saw that the kids were militarized, they had little uniforms on, and they would brag, Mussolini bragged that the trains ran on time, and they took us out to an area where they filled on a flooded area. But there were beggars in the street as well, you know.
Yeah. That reminds me of the word anarchy, which Utah Phillips explains. Anarchy is making laws for yourself and not other people. Any comment on that?
No.
Okay. Well, I got two more. We're still okay? Haskell, it's really been a joy and a pleasure, and really appreciate your time. They've got two more quick questions. One is, what's the healthiest cultural shift you see developing today?
The world, the 99% of the world gaining, for many different reasons, an awareness that they have fundamental things in common. I think that's actually, and is expressed in what you call the Occupy movement, which is alive in many forms all over the world now.
Yeah.
And that's why I add into that awareness and that connection. The fact that when I shot in Chicago, when Chicago was absolutely a city under siege, that we did not know that in California. Streets were closed for weeks, schools were closed, businesses were closed, buildings were boarded up. There was Homeland Security in full battle garb. In other words, the city under siege. And the fact, just that information was not on regular television. It is important, and the contrary to it is we as communicators can spread the word of the connectedness, is that people are saying the system's not working for us.
Yeah.
And that's true. That was true for the thousands in streets, and many, you'll see in the film 4 Days in Chicago, all over the world.
Yeah.
And that's what Occupy did. Occupy could actually see some of the people that they see on the internet, which is not as warm as being able to talk with them and see who they are and smell their breath and know that they have to go pee somewhere and all those other things.
Yeah. Haskell, what gives you the most optimism?
What makes me optimistic? That I'm doing a good job staying alive and having my motor mouth still available to get recorded, so it won't die when I die.
Haskell, what a pleasure, man. You're the man. Thank you so much.
I've been restraining myself from applauding almost every answer I've wanted to applaud, and I've had to hold myself back, Haskell. I feel like I learned more about you in this last hour and a half than I ever have.
Well,
Yeah,
that's good.
that's great. No, it was great answers.
Thank you very much,
Very,
Mark.
very astute, very clear thinking.
Yeah.
Man.
Yeah, it's really a pleasure,
Thank you.
Haskell. Thanks for the time. Thanks for all your work over the
no,
years.
look at, I am, now, what are you going to do with this?
Well, that's one thing is what I usually do is I put on archive.org so anybody can go and look at it free. There's no money involved. These guys are all doing this volunteer and me.
Yeah.
But that's up to you.
I don't care if you.
Yeah, we'll put it on archive.org and then it's a learning tool and anyone can go up there. And,
For myself, if I had that, I would get flying fingers to transcribe it.
yeah. Oh, yeah. We can do that.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean,
Well,
they can. Once it's up there, they can.
Well,
actually.
just the audio.
Yeah.
But to do that is costly, which I would pay for.
Beautiful. I mean, any sense of getting it able for anyone to go access it is the important thing. Yeah. And but off the record, I'd love to hear this one. I'm sorry I didn't bring it up, but we don't have to have this. In Ann Arbor, 35 years ago, you gave a lecture at Angel Hall, and you told us that you and Jack Nicholson directed Cuckoo's Nest until they kicked you off the set. And then 20 years later, I went up to you at Santa Monica's bookstore, Midnight Special, and I says, you told me that you directed Cuckoo's Nest with Jack 20 years ago. Is that true? And you gave me this great look. So I don't know if you want to talk about that, but...
Well, actually, it's not actually the case.
Yeah.
I mean, there are aspects of it
Yeah.
where, because Milos is very foreign, and so I did it. Yeah, and of course I knew Jack for a long time.
Yeah.
Before he was Jack, before I shot him in Roger Corman films.
Did you really?
I shot films, some of them under the name Mark Jeffrey, the two names of my kids. Well, actually, one of the films that I shot has been on
Turner?
On Turner on their.
What's the title?
It's called Stakeout on Dope Street.
Oh, yeah. But that's on your IMDb. It's listed that you're the cameraman under a different name.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it is, yeah.
How about Amelia D'Antonio?
Yeah,
What an amazing
oh,
filmmaker.
yeah,
So you did one film with them, Underground?
yeah. Well, that's why recently Saul Zaentz died. You know, Saul Zaentz was
Couple
a
days
Cuckoo's
ago.
Nest.
Yeah.
You know, I was bounced for Cuckoo's Nest when there was still some stuff to shoot,
Yeah.
and there was never any reason given at all, and I had heard that the accounting department, the FBI had visited the accounting department up there, and when I talked to Milos when I got fired and so forth, Milos said, "Look at Haskell, I'm sorry to let you go, but I can't give you the reason, but I have to do it. You have to go." I suspect that there was something to do with the FBI, and then years later, I asked Saul Zaentz, and Saul said, "Yeah,
FBI?
yeah."
What?
And well, in order to shoot on D'Antonio's film, we had to make sure that we weren't plants, that we weren't being followed, that yeah, period.
How about the conversation? Did you work on that?
Yeah, the conversation, yeah, I should, yeah. That was just a practical thing with Francis. As Francis took the job, and he had commitments to, and he wrote me. I have the letter that he wrote me. No, he had commitment to the San Francisco Opera, which he was way behind on, and he had to do it. And he took the job on the conversation, thinking that it would take more time. And I worked out a way to shoot the whole opening of the film very, very quickly, and it was semi-documentary style with multiple cameras. And even the scripting, at that time I had one of the first briefcase telephones. So I had recorded a lot of conversations between couples and things.
Surreptitiously?
Yeah. So we used that. And so that was it.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Haskell. What a pleasure and real honor.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. And if you want, I could show